In today's podcast, Ryan and I pick up where we left off from a previous podcast. We get right into the financial construct, programming, deprogramming, spreadsheets, and numbers. We had fun. Hope you enjoy listening. Thank you. All right. Welcome to the Banking with Life podcast. My name is James Neathery. I'm here with my favorite co-host, Ryan Griggs.
The only co-host.
The only. You want to redo that one?
Good to see you. Good to talk to you. No, keep going. Why are you stopping? No.
Well, because I didn't want to, you know, throw you a curveball like that.
I was prepared.
Oh, well, I was prepared. Okay, really, thanks. We're glad you're here. We're excited that you're here, and we're excited to be here. And
today's subject is programming and deprogramming.
All of a sudden, I feel like
fancy title later.
You're going to talk about the CIA or something.
They could have a part in it. That could be that could be happening.
The deep state.
Yeah, something's got to account for this nonsense out there.
Yeah. Well, what do you mean by programming and deprogramming?
Well, almost everybody, 98% of people out there, maybe more, have one sort of understanding about how someone's financial life should look over, throughout the years, over the decades. Mm. And they all come in one form or another, and you can tinker around the edges in, this or that product, this or that retirement plan, whatever. But generally speaking, the idea is to go to school, work hard, get good grades, graduate, get a job, go work for some corporation. And this is kind of dying now, right? You might work for more than one corporation. Right. But you're going to work for a corporation or corporations, and nothing against them. You're going to work for somebody. You're going to be an employee is the idea. You're going to be have a job, work for somebody else, single income, dependent upon their value production, but we won't get too much into that.
Have you thought about this much?
A little bit. And then at some point you're going to buy a house, and of course in order to buy a house or a home or a condo or whatever, you're going to get a mortgage. That mortgage is going to come from a bank. Eventually you'll pay it off unless you get foreclosed on in the middle of a financial crisis or something. And finally, one day you'll retire, and hopefully you're lucky enough not to retire around one of those major financial crises that wipes out half of your retirement portfolio. You'll live off that, maybe off your kids, and die poor. So that's kind of the various versions, a little embellished, but that's kind of the...
Can't we just believe everything's going to be okay and good?
Well, I do. I think the war's been won, but insofar as this life is concerned and the financial hurdles we face, no.
So we're gonna kind of you're getting kind of narrowed into the programming that exists in the financial world mainly, and as money and finances relate to us as individuals and family members, but and I'm ready to go, but it is the programming is really a lot broader. We're just kind of talking about finances and money, right? Mm-hmm. It's, oh my God, the conspiracy theorist, for example, that I don't even remember when that term was coined, and maybe in the 60s, whatever.
Whenever the CIA people came up with it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm, this is off. There's nothing notated here about conspiracy theories. I'm just saying.
You're the one harping on it.
I'm just, not that I've ever been accused of that, right, or accused other people of that. I'm just using that as an example, right? And I probably shouldn't go down that trail, but...
Well, look, there's a reason we are focusing on finance, and there's a reason we are ultimately, practitioners of IBC, is that's what the individual can control. We can get into the programming that goes on in the media, in politics, monetary policy, foreign policy, you name it. Ain't a damn thing you can do about any of that.
No, but we can recognize that programming exists across every area of our life.
True.
In radio, TV, print, and it has for generations. I mean, not a particular programming that we're all being programmed for a particular thing, but as a society, I believe that we are being programmed to act a certain way. And especially when it comes to our money, that programming does exist. What you hear on the radio over and over and over, what you see in print, what you see and listen to on TV. Yeah. There's a narrative, and you've got to almost wonder who benefits from that narrative, because it isn't you and me dying broke, or watching our money go up and down, or abdicating our responsibility.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think some people could push back, like, oh, programming, like, it's so conspiratorial. No, but you mentioned the right word there is a narrative. There is a predominant narrative out there about how people should manage their money, about how they should manage their labor time, about the way they should spend their time, really, when it comes down to it. I mean, that's all employment is, a particular way to spend your time in order to earn some money. So there is a narrative out there. And I think if you don't like programming, if you don't like that word, narrative, and everybody knows that, my gosh, turn on the news, right?
Okay, so I would add constructed narrative.
Constructed, absolutely, it is. And so, like you said, certain people benefit and others don't. Which is the majority of us. So, yeah, I mean, this is the subject here is more broad than what we would normally talk about. Like the mechanics of IBC or something like that. But I mean, what I want to challenge is conventional thinking as it pertains to finance, and in two respects come to mind quickly. Is one, how life insurance is typically treated in that narrative, and then also what people generally desire, what they want, what they look for when going about their purchases of financial assets, right? Be they retirement assets, like tax qualified plans, this kind of thing, or just a general advisory services, right, when it comes to managing their money. And that is the sex appeal. It's the nice offices, the nice cars, the good looking person selling the stuff.
Whoa, what do you...
Yeah, I'm not talking about... but it's the big names, the big brands, the nice marketing campaigns. I think all that just provides a low information security blanket. You feel safe because the company's got the big name and they've spent all sorts of your money on marketing. And I think there's a certain appeal about it, but that's all part of the narrative. And life insurance has a certain place in it, and then the rest of the plan, the rest of the financial plan has another place in it, and all of it is part of a failing narrative. I mean, we're not mad at programming because it's programming. I mean, there's that too. But at the end of the day, the program doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
For who?
Right. For you. It doesn't work for you. Maybe but the folks selling it, the money managers and the financial entertainers out there who do.
Can I say here?
Really well.
I would like to interject here. Because we're talking about the underlying, blanket of safety, feelings, warm and fuzzy, and I might have mentioned it to you previously. I know I've talked to several people, but watching TV, I don't watch much TV at all, but every now and then, you're walking by the TV and you can't help but be captured by, a commercial. Well, I love this. It's one of the big banks, and there's a young, good-looking GQ guy walking into an internet cafe, and they're talking about online banking. And in the background, there's a big, stodgy, Romanesque bank facade like San Francisco or Greece, or and it fades away and or even kind of explodes. Like, that's the old way to bank, where that image of big columns and big strong safety, and that's being blown away. And he's walking into an internet cafe like, we're all online, everything's online. That's old banking, this is new banking.
I see where you're going.
And if you don't think that isn't a controlled narrative and constructed, not that they couldn't, the central banks are masters at money manipulation, right?
That's their job. That's their whole job description.
Well, not defined by Congress. Their job description is to, that they can't do
stable money and no unemployment.
Unemployed, yeah. I'm just saying that narrative, I mean, it's a big visual and it's a great, message it's impressive the way they're conveying the message.
Yeah.
Okay. But I'm looking at that and I'm an old guy. I'm like, oh my God, they can manipulate money at the speed of light right now. I mean,
yeah,
it's
faster to have an algorithm do it.
No question. But if I'm looking at everything as digital and, electronic, I mean, doesn't that further separate me from reality?
Yeah. And on the
real money, sound money, real assets is what I'm talking about.
Well, and on the practical level, it often comes with a separation of control, right? I mean, especially if you're banking with a traditional bank, you have no control.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go down there and withdraw anything from my safety deposit box. I mean, you can lock the front door, but you can kick me off. You can deplatform me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have this conversation with people who, I don't know, maybe they do something that's controversial or whatever. They're in a line of business that's unpopular or whatever. Like a family in the cannabis business, for example, back in California. And, businesses that are legitimate businesses, providing goods and services to the market, fully voluntary, not hurting anybody, right? Not forcing anybody to do anything, not killing anybody, can often become, for unrelated reasons, political opponents. Mm-hmm. And it always seems to me that those people should be beating the doors down to get into infinite banking. Mm-hmm. Like, why? It also just so happens that they're usually a lot of cash flow, and it's like, oh my gosh, what you could do with well-designed dividend-paying whole life would be insane. But that it doesn't just apply to them over there, right? That's something that applies to everybody, right? Anybody could become, what's it called? There's a, like the outcast or the.
Oh yeah, the guy being shunned, the one being shunned.
Yeah.
Ostracized.
And I think part of it is that, that would never happen to me. Oh, that one.
An example.
Right.
Waterboarded.
That won't ever happen to me. And it kind of goes in line with what you're saying about technology. It's all sold on convenience, and this is, part of the new era of financial management. And it's, like I said earlier, at the end of the day, it doesn't work. And people are going to figure that out here pretty quick. I mean,
the financial construct doesn't work. Is that what you're saying?
Right. And it's been a while. It's been over 10 years since we've had a major correction in the stock market and in conventional financial assets. And so I think people have forgotten, or maybe they never even experienced, because they were too young at the time to be working, what that does to people's financial situations. But that's ultimately what we're talking about. The problems with that result from fractional reserve banking are why that fractional reserve banking is why this narrative of go to school, work hard, get a job, buy a house, get a mortgage, retire can't work in the long run.
Part of it. Yeah. Fractional reserve banking. Yep. So it's kind of broad, the programming, deprogramming. But if programming exists, and we agree that it does in various forms to varying extents, deprogramming, if programming exists, deprogramming may be desirable.
Absolutely.
All right. Now, one thing that the infinite banking concept has done for me, and I'm not going to, share my whole story or anything like that, but after after it doesn't take very long to practicing the infinite banking concept legitimately, right, on purpose, to be separated from, this construct. this financial construct.
Yeah, it no longer applies to you.
Oh my God, it's liberating. It's freeing, and then it's like, well, if this is working and, you're still operating in the constructed narrative and you're being told that this is right or this is wrong, and you're doing the exact opposite of everything that you've been trained to do, told to do as a professional, as a consumer, and you're going upstream, you're going against the grain, and, looking over your shoulder, like waiting for the hammer, what's wrong. There comes a point in time that it just becomes easier and easier to not pay attention to the noise, because the narrative is freaking noise, right? And it's so freeing and so liberating.
Yeah.
And it's almost like deprogramming.
It really is. The sort of the scales fall from your eyes kind of thing, right?
Yeah, over a period of time, it's like it was a process for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have a client and also a good friend who... He has
one client,
I have one good friend, and more than one client, but this one happens to be both. And he's got a kind of he's young, a little younger than me, significant amount of student loan debt, and so a complicated financial situation. And he's got a job making, for where he's at, good money, but significant student loan debt, right? And needs a systematic strategy to get out of it. And so we walk through the whole debt repayment thing, which I'm not going to go through because that's a subject for another time, but went through the whole method of how to transfer debt from banks and the government to the life insurance company, and then through policy loans, and then repay those policy loans over time. And when all is said and done, you're better off. And to really walk through step by step took like 45 minutes or an hour or something. And the first time we did it, once we got to the end, it was like a light bulb went off. It was like, all I need to do is go make money. And it's like, yep, that is literally all you need to do. And then pay the premium.
Sure.
Make the money, pay the premium. Make the money, pay the premium.
Payments.
And loan payments. Yeah. But,
well, I mean, look, there's a lot of stuff out there on the internet.
That's fair. Repay your loans.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Part
of that whole strategy of the debt repayment is to systematically repay policy loans. So I'm not saying that, but when it comes down to how do I sort of start the engine, how do I propel this thing forward, what it really comes down to is once the strategy is understood, once infinite banking is understood, once you know what's going on in a policy, once you understand the relationship between the cash value, the death benefit, your premiums, and your other financial assets and investing. Once all of that is integrated into one singular way of thinking, right? Once you've put it all together in one understanding.
Singular thinking.
You know what I mean?
I do.
Okay.
I'm jacking with him. Yeah. So, okay. Sorry.
Once you get how it all integrates, it dramatically, and this is what happened for him, it dramatically simplifies the whole financial aspect.
God. What a relief when that noise doesn't, I'm not talking about good reggae music or country and western music or rap, whatever you like. Noise. I'm talking about noise. I mean, doesn't it make you uncomfortable if you're listening to noise for a long enough period of time?
Absolutely.
And so when you can just step away like that young man from the noise, it's like that's sincere, legitimate relief.
Yeah, it's like, this is what's going to happen. All I need to do is go out. The policy is going to do what it's going to do. The values are going to do what they're going to do. All I need to go do is go to work, provide a valuable good and service, or go to my business, provide a valuable good and service, and just give it time.
Do what you were going to do anyway.
Yeah.
Right. But now control the cash flows where they're going to and coming from, and then master the discipline.
Right.
Right. It's like, it's not magic.
And to really pin it down, what the conventional narrative is all about is making sure that you don't have control over your own capital. The whole idea is to get your money into the bank that you don't own, in an account that you don't own, in an amount that you have no guarantee for, so that the underlying system, the commercial fractional reserve banking cartelized system, can go out and lend money hand over fist that previously didn't exist in order to charge interest to other people and enrich the banking sector. That's the whole goal. And it all starts with separation of you from control over capital.
Yes. That's where it starts, and that's the narrative. That's the constructed narrative, or the message of the narrative, is you're not able, you're not capable, you don't know enough, you don't know as much as they do, right?
Yep.
So you need to abdicate your responsibility, i.e. control.
Yeah. You need to give up control of your capital. And I mean, I get it. People don't, we're brought up and it's natural. You reach a certain age, okay, time to get a checking account. A little bit longer, okay, time to get a car. Well, how are you going to pay for the car? Conventional lending. A little bit further, first job, getting out of the first apartment, going to buy a house. How do you get it? Mortgage.
Well, roll your sleeve up. Let me see your number.
Yeah.
I mean, your credit score, we've joked many times in the past about, oh, here, let me see my number. It should be tattooed on my arm.
Right. Number you didn't ask for.
I was assigned.
That you didn't sign up for, that other people are judging you by anyway.
Yeah.
Got a file on you with their whole financial life. That's how they're going to determine whether or not to give you money that you need to do what you were going to do.
It didn't exist.
Right.
Until you.
And so it all begins with, and so what's infinite banking's place in all of that? It is to attack the source, which is control of capital. It's how the individual can optimally form, accumulate, use, deploy their own capital. And if you do that, you can trace the effects through how it's going to affect your financing or whatever, how it's going to affect your debt repayments, how it's going to affect your relationship with investment and entrepreneurial opportunity. You can trace out the effects of what's going to happen as you make this transition into reclaiming control of capital.
How can I trace that out? I mean, we just spoke.
Well, you got to talk through it. How much time you got?
Today or what?
Because it takes a while, because part of the deprogramming is unwinding all of that built up, calcified previous understanding, that whole system of thought that you built up, that you were conditioned under, that you were programmed to understand, that you didn't know, and the people telling you probably didn't know either, because they only heard it from somebody else. They're just repeating what they heard, and they did it, and in order for them to feel good about it, they're going to tell you so you can do the same thing, and everybody can feel good in conformity. That's really what's going on, and there's no malice in it.
Well, yeah.
I mean, for most people, there's not, right? I mean, most people are good. Even the bankers. I get beat up all the time back home in West Texas because I know local bankers, and they don't know what's going on.
Yeah, we're not talking about the local banker. We're talking about big banks, cartelized, fractional reserve,
but that little
system.
cohort of people is centered in South Manhattan, in the financial district, or DC, wherever they are. They're not at your corner bank. They're not your neighbor. They're not the people at your chamber of commerce or whatever.
Right.
So they don't know. Point is, they don't know either. And more than likely, your parents didn't know and their parents didn't know. So no one's intending to confuse no one. Some are. Most people are not intending to confuse you or mystify you or or throw the veil over, right? They're, if they knew about this, they'd be paying as much premium as they could too. But the way to get, it begins with understanding that the problem is control over capital. And if you're willing to challenge previously received beliefs, then you can eventually get to a point where you would see how controlling capital can affect every aspect of your financial experience, which it will. I mean, it just will.
Very good. Look, we're kind of broad about programming, deprogramming. There are a couple of ideas that I wanted to mention, during this conversation. And one thing is I've heard it my whole career. I've heard it my whole life, is this idea of saving 10%. I mean, that's programming. Yeah. I mean, where did that come from? And I ask everyone, I often ask, wonder where that came from. The best that I can determine, it may be biblical, the 10% tithe, right? Well, and I'm not a Bible scholar. I am a believer, right? But there was much more going on than just a 10% tithe, right? And so, but I don't know where it came from. I'm just saying it may have come from there and developed. But today, if you're saving 10%, good job, but it's not enough.
Oh, no.
Right? And if you buy into that paradigm, that constructed paradigm narrative that if you save 10% and you do it tax-free or tax-deferred and you're going to be in a lower tax bracket in the future is a fail. Okay, it's a fail is all I'm saying. And so, what are you saying, James? I'm saying exactly what I just said. Saving 10% is not enough. You need to get your savings up, you, me, all of us, to 20-25%. Now, after you,
and keep going.
Oh, yeah, don't stop there.
No.
But and it's okay that's a process too. Right.
Not going to happen overnight.
Right. And now, how can you do that? Well, the same dang way that the average all-American family is sending 35, 45, 50% of their income by volume right through their hands. Right. So let's don't, strain at gnats and swallow camels. It is possible. Okay. But that's one, kind of a constructed idea that is dang near ingrained in us.
But there should be a certain amount that you have to save.
Yeah, 10 sounds like a round number. Yeah. All right. So, that's just one. And the other is, and I know you've done a lot of work on this, and if you don't know or you're unaware of the work that he has done or is doing, I'd encourage you to look it up, track him down, medium.com, his web address, and on capital, the idea of capital and opportunity. And I want to say this, that, in Nelson, he spoke of many times in various ways, and we've discussed this, that capital attracts opportunity. All right. Okay. Well, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Well, the predominant economic schools of thought have it wrong. Okay. So yeah, it sounds good and it sounds reasonable, but that's backwards than what Wall Street, how they operate and how the most schools of economic thought, teach. And here's the example that I talk about quite often. Wall Street creates this opportunity, i.e. the latest, shiniest gadget product, right? It's cool, right? And of course they made money creating it, right? And I'm a capitalist. I have nothing against profits, okay? And then they sell it. This opportunity, right? This opportunity that we created is so good, it's going to attract capital. So I'm going to take it to the market and make money selling it. And then I'm going to make money managing it. And if I keep going, I'm going to make money shorting it and crushing it. And then I'll make money repurchasing and repackaging and selling it again. Okay. I digress a little. But this idea that I'm going to create a product, Wall Street, and it's so good that I'm going to present it to the general public, and it is going to attract capital. It's wrong. You accumulate capital. Capital attracts opportunity, and that's number one. It's true, and whenever you accumulate capital or have control over capital, you'll see that to be true as well. And I think that could be a natural law.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree. I think that, okay, so opportunity is a fuzzy word. What is it? And I think when Nelson speaks about capital attracting opportunity, both in becoming your own banker and in building a warehouse of wealth, it is as if, and I do think it is a metaphor, it is as if opportunity comes to you, right? He used to say that opportunity hunts you down. And that is the case, right? If individuals know that you're sitting on 200 grand in liquid equity or whatever it is, 50, however much your cash value is, however much capital you've accumulated, opportunity will come to you. And people, I've said this before, people with a lot of money know that that's the case. And so they don't tell people that they have a lot of money unless they've got an ego problem or they need to inform others of how great they are. Most people who have genuinely, honestly accumulated significant amount of financial resources keep that information to themselves for that very reason, that other people are going to beat their door down trying to pitch them this or that product or this or that investment opportunity. Right, so it's the exact reverse problem that most people have, which is, oh my gosh, what do I do with my money? I got to pay somebody to go out there and find the opportunity in the market, right? And that involves all sorts of, you got to pay the guy, then you got to pay all the hidden fees and everything. It's the reverse problem of what the typical consumer of financial advisory services has, right? But I think though that the idea that opportunity is out there, that it's a objective thing, like you can find it like, oh, there is an opportunity. I think fundamentally that's metaphorical. Opportunity only exists between your ears. It's up here, right? An individual perceives whatever the objective reality is of the situation, right? You might see a price of something here and you might think to yourself, ooh, I could buy it there and sell it over here at a different price. Or, oh, I could do X, Y, or Z with that particular parcel of real estate. Or I have an idea for a product I think people would really like to buy or sell, and I kind of know how I would put it together and everything. All of that is in your mind. That is not an objective thing you see in the world, right? Even something like someone coming to you and saying, hey, lend me $100,000, I'll pay you back a certain amount of money. Like, in order to understand that as an opportunity per se, you have to be able to calculate in your head, and this really gets into my research gets into. You've got to be able to understand in your mind that that's going to make you better off, right? Just somebody saying, here, lend me this amount, I'll pay you back this amount over time is not enough. You've got to understand in your head that that's a good deal for you, right? And to make that perfectly clear, you may only have access to money at 10% and someone's wants to borrow money from you to pay you back at 8%. Okay, then that's no longer a good deal, right? But the only reason the individual knew that is because they had to go through the process of understanding and judging how much it cost them to get money and how much they could get if they invested with this particular person, right? So my point is that opportunity happens in the mind of the individual, right? And I think the reason that we perceive in the world that capital attracts opportunity, quote unquote, in air quotes, is because the more capital you have, the more financial value you can exercise control over, the greater the landscape of things you can do, right? If you're walking around $100,000 flush, like, you can drop it on a week's notice, right? The landscape of possibilities that you perceive is fundamentally different than the guy who's walking down with $50 in his pocket and no other liquid cash, right?
I get that.
And so it sounds kind of basic, but like I think that's technically why it's the case that you have to build capital first in order to achieve some sort of opportunity. And that could be an investment opportunity, entrepreneurial opportunity, whatever, right? So that saying out there that it takes money to make money is like almost true, but it really takes capital in order to achieve or attain an opportunity that will then generate a return. I mean, it's not just that simple. Like, if you have, and by the way, all you have to do in order to build sufficient capital is make more than you spend. And I don't care what your job is or how much money you make. All you got to do is make more than you spend. If you make more than you spend, then you can build capital, right? In fact, you already are. So it's probably in an inferior asset, maybe cash or a bank account or whatever. But you can optimally build capital. And as you do that, your understanding day to day, walking around about your attitude towards potential opportunity will change, and it'll transform as your level of control over capital increases. So I think that's really what's going on there. I mean, it kind of complicated and might sound a little technical or academic or whatever, but
no,
I think that's a genuine.
It sounded very academic, but it's genuine. It is.
But I think that's literally what's going on. I don't know how else to say it, but I think that's, and the reason I think that's important is because, most economists, I mean, that's just not the idea that opportunity is out there sounds so plausible. It's like, well, think of the land of opportunity, for example, America, the land of opportunity.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't think that's what happened. Like, I don't think people came here because it was the land of opportunity per se. Maybe they perceived it as such.
A lot of people came over as slaves.
Right. Well, okay.
I'm just saying. It's
the whole, I think
or they were sent by, I'm just interjecting.
Yeah. Okay. Conspiracy theorists. Okay. But what really happens?
No, there really was a potato famine caused by the English. I'm kidding. I'm Irish.
What really goes down is that individuals perceive that somewhere else they will have greater security in the fruits of their labor and keeping what they own. And that is the avenue to prosperity. That's what can allow them to build a better life. And so you can think of all that and then say, therefore, that's the land of opportunity, right? Okay, let's go over there. Mm-hmm. But that, and it might just sound like, okay, well, duh, Ryan, that's what we're talking about. All right, well, then why aren't you building capital? How much premium you're paying? What's your cash value right now, right? Because it's obviously not translating. If you go into the financial world, that distinction is totally lost. And the idea is to do the reverse. Don't build capital. Reduce your control over capital. You can have a little pitiful emergency fund, right? But by the way, don't use it. Right? You only use it in an emergency, right? So the place for capital in conventional financial advice is in something that you're not supposed to use in the first place, right? Which is stupid because capital is supposed to be used. It's what makes capital capital is the intention to use it, right? But you're allowed to accumulate a little emergency fund, and then you can't spend the rest of your money fast enough, right? Either you're Dave Ramsey, you should pay cash for everything, or you're anybody else out there, and you should depend upon the conventional financial world to take care, and like you said, abdicate your responsibility so they can take care of it for you. Whether it's your mortgage, whether it's the government to put your kids through school, right? Indoctrination camps, whatever. So that it's like
conspiracy theories.
Yeah, it's like, well, maybe everything I said earlier like seems obvious, and it's like, okay, maybe it does, but then why over here in the financial world is accumulating capital in the optimal fashion not the dominant priority? Right? It really should be.
Because somebody's making money.
Yeah.
With the constructed narrative.
Well, and I really don't think anybody's ever really... I mean, Nelson used to say that life insurance companies don't understand what they have. They don't even know what they're working with because they didn't come up with infinite banking. Mm-hmm. And I think it's true. I just don't think they know. I think it has to be proven logically, qualitatively, linguistically. I'm not saying you have to do it with math, but I think it's got to be explained to the world of finance, to the consumer of financial services and all that this is the case, that we don't understand the nature of capital. One, people don't even have a definition of capital. You ask 10 people what the definition of capital is, you get 20 answers, right? So one, we don't have that conceptual understanding, but two, we don't integrate it with how to perform either on the consumption end when we're going to pay for stuff or the investment end. So you brought up capital. I could talk forever. So it's... No,
it falls right underneath the programming and deprogramming, kind of...
Absolutely. It is the key.
Capital?
Yes.
Is the key.
It is the key.
I agree. I think, as you're going through your intellectual explanation, which I dearly love, and I don't know, maybe some of these listeners or viewers haven't listened to us previously, or maybe they missed a couple of podcasts. I don't know.
Shame on you.
Yeah, you should not miss that. This goes back, I would encourage you to look at the 5-part book review series that Ryan and I did on Nelson's first book, Becoming Your Own Banker. And really that going through that series brought a little clarity to what this podcast would ultimately look like.
That's the source, yeah.
Because of what you don't see in that 5-part series. It was a laborious labor of love. Okay, that was a lot of work going into that. So there was a lot of downtime or off-camera time, not downtime. A lot of, shots or filming that didn't make it on the video. And that was really the genesis of this podcast because, he's young, I'm older. He's pasty white, but getting a little darker. That's good. I'm not.
I've got great son lately.
He's academic. I'm not. He speaks academic ease.
It's so funny because if you talk to other academics, they're like, Ryan, that ideologue, bomb thrower. But I come over here and then I'm the academic. It's like,
so
can't win anywhere.
I just want to add, thanks for the allowance to take that side note. But I think as you're building capital, right, that we should all be doing, there's no question that you gain experience, right, unique to building capital in you and the method that you're doing that. And then, therefore, your experience absolutely affects your perception. Because,
yes.
You were mentioning, opportunity is perception. And no question about that. No question, because what it takes to build capital, deliver a product, a service, or your manual labor, however that is, where you're digging ditches or writing books, whatever it is, your manual labor, you gain unique experience. We all have a unique experience. And what I'm saying is what you experience as you build capital gives you the information that you're going to use to determine what an opportunity is. And without that capital, you're not going to have the experience or the vision.
Opportunities don't exist without capital. It's just a fantasy. If you don't have the capital in order to monetize what you perceive to be an opportunity, it's not an opportunity.
Well, what if someone has capital and you don't? The opportunity that is perceived appears between them. One can't see it because they don't have capital, and the other can because they do have capital. Did the opportunity exist without the capital?
What? So yeah, okay. If someone has an idea, and this happens all the time, right? This is why the angel investor community exists, venture capital, all that. That's why this all exists, because you got a bunch of people who are entrepreneurially minded, like Americans tend to be relative to populations of other countries. And they've got these ideas, but the entire Shark Tank, it's epitomized in the show Shark Tank. It's people with capital and people without capital.
Right.
And the people without capital go to the people with the capital in order to monetize what they're offering.
Did the opportunity exist before they hit the floor in front of all the sharks?
In the mind of the entrepreneur who, yeah. And so, like Mises says, that Ludwig von Mises, Austrian economist, in order to act, you've got to perceive a path forward. You have to see in your mind a better state of affairs that could exist if you took some action, right? That's a necessary component of all human action, right? And so that criteria may be fulfilled. But if you don't have the means in order to achieve that criteria, then you'll never embark upon that course of action. You'll never go about the process of bringing that opportunity that's in your mind into reality, right? You literally have to finance opportunity into existence.
Yep.
It's got to be paid for. And if you're not paying for it, someone else will. And like Nelson says, he who has the gold makes the rules. Right.
Whoever's controlling that banking function is getting paid.
Absolutely, and they're the ones determining
the rules.
Ultimately, whether you get the money. So they're determining how it's going to be used. Fundamentally, they're determining when it's going to be paid back, how it's going to be paid back, and how much you're going to be paid back. And more than likely, they're determining who owns whatever it is you're going to go create.
My God, they can shape the opportunity, is what I'm hearing.
Absolutely.
It's one more.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Perfect.
It all starts with the capital. And I mean, that's fundamentally, by the way, what a capitalist is. Someone who advances capital. Right?
Yes.
Fundamentally, when people are practicing infinite banking, they're just becoming a capitalist in the optimal fashion. All right, I beat that stuff to death. Well, I mean, what does all that have to do with programming? Look, that's the way out.
What do you mean that's the way out? What do you mean that's the way out?
Putting yourself in control of capital.
Is a way out of
the narrative, of
Yes.
the programming, of everything that you're expected to do, that everybody else is expected to do. It's how you transition. It's so many things. It's how you transition from an employee to an employer, if that's what you want to do. It's how you start your own business. It's how you finance transitions between one form of employment to another. It's how you take care of unexpected negative things that could come up, medical expenses, death in the family, any sort of tragedy. It's how you take advantage of positive opportunities that you see arise. It's the cornerstone of a truly profitable financial strategy. I was speaking of Shark Tank. I was on LinkedIn the other day scrolling, wasting my time, and Barbara, I think her name is, I don't know her last name, but she's one of the sharks on Shark Tank.
Yeah.
And she said that over the last 10 years that she's been investing in businesses, she's invested in maybe 70 companies, and 20 of them failed. And she said, the reason? Cash flow. They didn't have enough money from the time they needed it to the time the receivables were coming in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And on some level, that's true. Like, yeah, it'd be better if the cash flow was coming in the whole time. But really what those companies lacked was capital. Had they the capital under their own control, they could have survived the time where they didn't have the cash flow. And that is... It all comes back to capital is my point. It's how companies, you could do everything I said earlier. You could finance a transition between one form of employment to another, start your own company, whatever. You can also make it through the bad times when cash flow is less than you might like it to be.
No question. I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, because you get in the world of business, as we all know, it's cash flow. And when you get into the real estate world, there's lots of different perspectives that are shared and promoted. And one has been where cash flow is better than cash or assets. Would you rather have the asset
or the cash flow?
Well, personally, I like to have both, but I want to control the access to capital and the banking function.
Absolutely.
I mean, and then, of course.
And if you take care of that, by the way, you can have both.
Oh my gosh, yes. Exactly. You can create the cash flow. Yes. So, thanks for bringing that up. Of course, my daughter, she's going to be 12 this year. But
you said that like a question. Are you sure? Do you have certainty about that?
When you have more than one child, and it's like, you're... But we love Shark Tank, and I found out
it's a cool show.
I found out a couple of years ago that young ladies, little girls between like 9 and 12 was the fastest growing segment of their audience.
No kidding.
And I'm like, God bless America. We're going to be just fine.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So
they should all be infinite banking.
Okay, what else you want to cover here on the programming and deprogramming? I mean, we've kind of gone a long time, and that got a lot broader than I kind of.
Yeah, no, I think it's good.
Yeah,
I'm happy.
Okay, perfect. We hope you're happy too. All right.
See you next time.
Goodbye.